baby Jessica. Nearly 60 years after her grandparents arrived in Britain from Jamaica, and despite being born into a comfortable middle-class family in Bristol, from the very beginning her future is influenced by one thing above all others: her race. Many of Jessica's life chances were determined even before she was born. The social, cultural and political circumstances which will shape her life are all largely beyond her control. But in this evening's programme, we'll be hearing from experts who have a better idea than most about what the future holds, not just for Jessica, but for all of us. In 2006, the government fears racial and religious tensions will tear society apart, as some groups find themselves increasingly isolated. But Jessica is bright and hard-working and does well at her local trust school, which is sponsored by a multinational drugs company. It contracts her as a future employee before she's even 10 years old. For Jessica, education offers every opportunity.
We need to, I guess, educate society, push the institutions to give ordinary citizens from all communities the opportunity to fulfill their potential. I guess when you consider a place like Bristol, which 200 years ago was the centre of slavery, wouldn't it be nice that in this great city of Bristol emerges the first black female Prime Minister? That way we'd have come the whole circle from slavery to emancipation that sees a black woman with the keys for number 10 Downing Street. That's my hope.
Child number 2 is Elliot, a farmer's son from Cornwall. In 2006, it's still possible to see farms with live animals. But before the decade is out, changes which have already been underway for 50 years start to accelerate at an alarming pace. The failing agricultural economy, coupled with demand for housing, means thousands of green fields are sold to developers.
What is going to happen in the next 10 or 20 years is there's going to be a pretty sharp reduction in the number of professional farmers, probably down by about a half over the next 20 years, and the average size of those farms will get much larger.
Hello, nice property. 35 million though.
Well, it represents very good value, total luxury.
So this is what's happened to the last working dairy farm in the UK.
Well, if you're interested to know, once Europe's common agricultural policy was wound up...
By 2026, most farms are owned by supermarkets, and most real farmers have retired. Their land taken over by younger, hobby farmers looking to invest their city bonuses. But not all cities generate fabulous wealth. In 2006, some parts of Plymouth are still classed amongst the poorest in Europe. And this is where we find child number 3. This is Ashley. His mother Jade is only 15 and already a drug addict. Ashley never knows his father.
The way by which people become criminals is ever changing. But 85% of so-called criminals, opportunists, come in, used to be 18, now tend to be entering about 14, but still tend, a vast majority of them, to leave the criminal life at the age of 24.
One government initiative aimed at single mothers finally gets Jade a job, selling beauty treatments door to door. Meanwhile, though, Ashley doesn't do well at school. Egged on by mates from similar backgrounds, he spends his teenage years pursuing a life of petty crime.
Those that become involved in real gains from crime look for somebody who will give them money for different types of property, like car theft, VCR theft. And if they're bright, they move on to white-collar crime and fraud.
Well, Ashley is bright. He finds a way to earn some extra cash by making and selling burgers from dodgy imported meat. The burgers end up on the plate of our poor farmer's son, Elliot. But the meat here certainly hasn't come from any animal known to this country.
What I'm pretty certain about, insofar as one can be over such a long period, is that this process of globalisation is going to go on. We are going to live in a much more integrated world in 100 years' time than we do today. And that means, of course, integrating the food chain. That means we'll become a lot less sensitive than we are today about whether our food is coming from another part of the world.
Well, wherever in the world that burger came from, feeding the leftovers to the farm dog was a fatal mistake. Elliot will live to regret this. DEFRA vets are already arguing over how the farm dog became infected and whether it spread to the rest of the herd. Soon all farms in the southwest will be under quarantine. A new cattle illness, purple nose disease, sounds funny but fatal, sweeps through the countryside. Vaccination is no defence. Farms are shut down and whole herds have to be slaughtered. At college, Jessica studies the disease and its impact. Her sponsor stands to make huge profits if it's first to find a cure. By 2026, all study is related to commercial gain, and students are ever deeper in debt. But technology finds a way to inject some playtime. Oh, tricky shot. It's another night in for Jessica. But just as learning is interactive, so is socialising. So she does get to hang out with her uni chums, even though she's based in Bristol and this lot are based in California.
We are the last generation, I think, the transition generation, that can actually try and harness, ask ourselves questions. What do we want science and technology to deliver? What do we want? What kind of life do you want for your kids? What kind of values do you want them to have? What kind of people do you want them to be? What kind of education should they have? What kind of society do you want to live in? What kind of identity and activities would you like to engage in? And we have to ask those questions, and the scientists aren't going to come up with answers. The scientists provide the tools. We as a society have to take responsibility for ourselves, and if we do that, then it could be very exciting. If we don't do that, then the world will be very, very different in 100 years' time.
30 years have passed. It's now 2036. These days it's rare indeed to see any wildlife in the countryside. What's left of Elliot's farm is given over entirely to genetically modified crops. Protesters realised long ago that they couldn't put the genie back in the bottle. Areas like Dartmoor, Exmoor and the Forest of Dean have become forests of wind farms. But it's too little, too late. Every year brings a new wave of climate chaos.
Well, in today's weather, most of the damage is coming from extremes, the extremes of weather. In the future, we will alter, if you like, the long-term averages, but the extremes will change as well. Well, of course, at the coast, most of the damage is done by storm surges, and if you increase the mean sea level, you increase the frequency of a given level of flood event. So a recent piece of work we did suggested that the sort of events that happen perhaps once per century now may happen once per decade or once in every 20 years by the end of the century.
We're now in 2040 and every opportunity to generate energy has to be grabbed, as fossil fuels are a thing of the past. All cars are electrically powered, and by the time Jessica reaches her mid-30s, she's finally graduated and is starting to escape the mountain of debt she's accumulated as a student. She can afford a very smart home, equipped with every mod con. And what was once called online dating means she can go clubbing from the comfort of her own front room. She can even meet the man of her dreams. And in our future game, this is our farmer, Elliot. Love grows out of a silicon chip. But it's not as much fun as the good old days.
We're seeing at the moment trends which suggest that over the next, say, 20 years, more of us are going to be living alone, less of us are going to get married, that we are going to be postponing starting a family until much later in life. And as a consequence, our society is going to become increasingly fragmented.
Let's catch up with Ashley now. So far it's been a life of ASBOs, probation, young offenders institutions, the army, and now prison.
Individuals involved tend to be desperate for group membership. They got involved in crime because that was the way in which they became part of a group of friends, and they shared an activity.
Ashley is desperate for purpose. Then it hits him. The world is changing, and not for the better, but he can make a difference and be a hero if he turns to eco-terrorism.
Terrorism is the weapon of the weak. They will always be weak, and they will always have to resort to it in order to have any sort of a voice.
Ashley's early years denied him a formal education, but his brief army career did teach him how to handle explosives. The world of his childhood has been cruel and unforgiving. As soon as he gets out of prison, he'll seek revenge through terrorism. As the Southwest develops more quickly than any other region, there's others who'll tear it down using the most brutal of tactics.